So I'm not entirely sure what happened, but smiling through it all. I just recorded an entire video about today. You're just gonna have to trust me that it went really great, went really smooth, and I come back to the computer and the only audio that was recorded was like the first 15 seconds and then it cut off. I'm not entirely sure. I think at some point one of the cables here must have slipped out, but this is just a signal that it's close to time to go home. We're close to the finish line. It's almost time to go home. It is almost time to go home. Just a couple days left here in Arizona for Cactus League play. But going back to yesterday, in my excitement to talk about some of the StatCast data that we were finally able to get with Justin Verlander, and in my excitement to talk about the additional horizontal movement on his curveball, to be able to see where the spin rate was on his fastball, and one other thing from yesterday too that I didn't discuss in the moment was that his vertical release point was noticeably lower yesterday compared to where it was at last season. Last year it was around 7.1 feet off the ground. I think yesterday was like 6.8. In my excitement to talk about all of that, I forgot to mention the actual biggest news of the day, which was that Jung Lee underwent an MRI for a nagging back issue. He had been scratched from Saturday's lineup, and we hadn't seen him since. And when it comes to backs, and when you consider that we're now only about 9 days away, it's reason for a level of concern. But some good news on that front today is that Lee underwent the MRI, and it revealed no structural damage. The extent of it is just mid to upper level back spasms. We don't have a concrete timetable on when Lee will be able to return, but manager Bob Melvin said that the Giants are hopeful that Lee can make his return on Friday after the Giants' off day on Thursday. The hope being that Lee's able to play at least 3 games before Giants have their opening game against the Cincinnati Reds on March 27th, which would leave him with the game on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So playing 3 of the 5 games between the potential return on Friday and opening day. Obviously not going to play all 5 of those games or even play them back to back to back, but just get him into games, specifically get him at bats, less about being out in center field, more so just getting him at bats. So a positive development on that front. As far as the game itself, this being the first night game that the Giants have had during Cactus League play, not including their spring breakout game against the Rangers prospect. The Giants beat the San Diego Padres 4-3, and the biggest takeaway from this game was just another great outing by Robbie. He goes 5 innings, allows 1 run, albeit not earned. It was the product of an error that was committed by Matt Chapman. We'll get to that in a second. So no earned runs, no walks either. Still has not walked anyone for the entirety of spring. 2 strikeouts. And this is kind of a continuation of what not just Ray has done for the entirety of the spring, but what he and Justin Verlander and Logan Webb have collectively done. That trio has a 2.16 ERA over 50 innings this spring in Cactus League play with 56 strikeouts. I don't know how many they've walked, but I can imagine it's that many. And when it comes to spring training stats, when it comes to spring training performance, you always want to take it with a pretty sizable grain of salt. Tim Lincecum, for example, was notoriously never good during spring training. The years that he won his 2 Cy Young Awards, his ERA during spring training was in the 4s. Johnny Cueto is another example that comes to mind. I can't remember the exact numbers of his first spring training. I think it was like 9. Or it was somewhere in that range. He was just awful during spring training. But Cueto ends up having the best season of his Giants tenure by far with the sub-3 ERA and then shoving in Game 1 of the NLDS, although I would imagine Giants fans kind of want to forget what happened after after the fact there. But Ray's been pitching really well over the course of spring. He continues to tinker with and experiment with that changeup. No, less about experimentation, but more getting comfortable with that pitch. That changeup, of course, being the pitch that he learned from last year's AL Cy Young Award winner Tarek Skubal. And one of the fun excerpts of our conversation with Ray after his starts was him saying that he texts Skubal about once a month. That relationship is continuing to develop. And funny enough, the Tigers are going to play the Giants next week at Oracle Park, that 2-game exhibition series that typically used to be against the Oakland A's before a season would start. And Ray was telling us how Scooble told him, when you start against us, don't throw that changeup. To which Ray said, every time I throw that changeup against you guys, I'm going to look over to the dugout and give a big old thumbs up. But despite the fact that that's an exhibition game, there actually is a chance that Ray might start against the Tigers in late May. It's not clear, it's not 100% certain, but there is a chance that either Ray or Justin Verlander gets an opportunity to start when the Giants play the Detroit Tigers in Detroit at Comerica Park in late May. Some other things to get into from today's game. I think I mentioned Chapman earlier. He committed 2 errors today, his second multi-error game of this spring. And last year, by comparison, a year where he ended up winning the 5th Gold Glove of his career, he only had 2 of those games. Like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to spring training, you try not to put too much stock into things, but it is something to at least have in the back of the head just going forward. I don't think it's going to be a big development. I don't think Matt Chapman has suddenly lost his ability to play an excellent third base, but it is something that just catches your attention given how great he has played the third base position over the course of his career. Patrick Bailey had one of his better games of the spring, reaching base in all 4 plate appearances that he had. 3 hits, 1 walk, one of those hits being a bunt. And infielder Casey Schmidt, who's in the competition for that 5th infielder spot, was scratched from today's game over here at Scottsdale Stadium due to a back injury. That's something that we'll continue to monitor going forward.